What's up guys, Rogue9 here, and today we continue our exploration of the stationary weapons in Battlefield 5. Devastation is quite an interesting map since it contains an AT gun that can be very useful, but I hardly ever see anyone build, and there are also a couple of sneaky ladders that you may not know about yet. All emplacements that I will show you are for the Conquest mode, and even though most of them will be the same in other game modes, some may vary. Oh, and thank you everyone who suggested Rotterdam as another map to look at in my last video. I'm exploring it right now and will hopefully have a guide ready soon. But for now, let me show you what you can do on Devastation. Let's once again go from east to west, and first up is this ladder that you can build in the northern corner of the old mall, also known as Echo Cap in Conquest. Once you climb up here, you have a decent overview of the cap, but the most useful part of being up here is surprising enemies trying to push in from the northern corner. Over on the southern side of the cap, on the second floor, you can erect a little bit of a defensive position with sandbags and an HMG. Yes, this machine gun will give you a very good overview of the cap, but at the same time this leaves you relatively exposed to counterfire from more angles than you can cover at any given time, plus the ramp that leads up to this position is actually quite difficult to cover from within the machine gun itself, and this leaves you open to being pushed and taken out once the enemy knows where you are. Nevertheless, it's a useful little gun to build, whether you're on the Allied side defending your home cap, or the German side holding on and harassing the counterattack from the Allied spawn zone. Heading a bit further west from here, in an area called Cathedral Front, you will have the opportunity to build quite an elaborate defensive sandbag position with two machine guns, one facing west-southwest along the road past the church, and one facing east towards Echo. Also part of this position is an ammo crate, barbed wire and anti-tank hedgehogs, so if you wanted to, you could really dig in here to slow down enemy movement along the southern side of the church, all the way along to Echo. The gun facing along the road to Charlie is in a good position to engage opponents all the way to the ridge halfway along the church, and you can also fire on anyone coming out of the collapsed side entrance. The gun on the other side can cover the road leading to the British spawn as well as two of the exits coming out of Echo, so in terms of effectiveness, both of these HMGs are pretty good, but they also come with a decent amount of risk. Many of the windows along the old mall will allow opponents to shoot down onto you, and the entire position is very vulnerable to being overrun by anyone coming from the ruins towards Delta Cap. Building up some tank traps and sandbags could be worthwhile, but all in all, I don't think holding out in this position is viable for more than a couple of minutes at the most, because once the enemy knows where you are, it's only a matter of time before they find a way to flank you. Plus, sitting in a stationary gun like this makes you an easy target for snipers. If you head north from here, you will find a couple of positions that, in my opinion, are far more viable. In a ruined building called the Firm on the minimap, you can build the 6-pounder AT gun I mentioned right at the start of the video. It's well hidden and behind decent cover, and will allow you to stop vehicles and infantry from moving along the northern road pretty much most of the way to Alpha Cap. You also have a very clear view of the sandbag emplacement halfway down the road, making that position very dangerous, but we'll get to that in good time. Risks for this AT gun are the flanks. You might be well hidden here, but once your position is known, opponents can move in from Charlie, Bravo, or from Echo through the ruins behind you, so don't get too comfortable here over the long run. On a floor just above this AT gun is another room that can be fortified quite well and also comes with a machine gun emplacement overlooking the same road and part of the front of the church. The view from here is not as clear as it could be, with a tree quite inconveniently placed to block part of your shots, but you can still have some effect from here with reasonable cover. So all in all, this building is a pretty decent spot to hole up in with a squad for a little while if you want to exert some control over the northern road and the path from Bravo to Echo. Moving just across the road to the main entrance of the church, there is once again a sizable sandbag position to be built, including a machine gun that faces directly towards the old mall. The arc of fire for this weapon will allow you to target anyone leaving Echo Cap, but you'll be fighting at relatively close distances, and great sightlines work both ways, of course. Fighting from this position will require your team to hold the church itself as well as protecting your flank towards Bravo, and with those directions secured, you stand at least a bit of a chance to hold down advancing enemies for a while. Jumping over to the north, there is a constructible machine gun position close to the destroyed library, which is of course Bravo Cap. From here, you have a clear view across the bridge and all the way to the church. Yes, you can also look left and right to a degree, but the main focus of this gun is straight ahead, since you will actually be able to put down lead through the broken part of the church all the way up to the platform around the organ. There will always be people trying to control the church from this organ balcony, and their attention will almost always be focused on the inside of the church, so quickly building up a bit of cover plus this MG can really allow you to catch enemies by surprise. As always, this position has its weaknesses, first and foremost the possibility of enemies coming up behind you from Bravo, but I would say that being able to put down a good spray of long-range fire into a camping spot that will almost always have players on it is of great value. HMGs are usually situational weapons, but this one will be very useful at some point in almost any round of Conquest. Use it to your advantage. Along the northern road is the sandbag and MG position I mentioned earlier. As useful as the two guns might be at covering the road in either direction, you potentially have AT guns aimed at you from both sides, and infantry can simply walk in behind you through the ruins towards Bravo Cap and through the church door from Charlie. Basically, you could have someone walk up behind you at any time from either direction. This makes the position highly risky if you're going to try to stay there for any length of time, and I would suggest avoiding it as much as possible. Okay, now of course there are still the guns around the German spawn and Alpha Cap that I need to show you, but before that let's hop over towards Delta, because there are a couple of ladders that you can build here that could come in handy. Just outside the cinema in the southeast, there is a ladder that lets you access a couple of neighboring buildings. Getting up here could give you the drop on your opponents, but in all fairness, that bit of collapsed building that the ladder takes you to can also be reached from the other side, so this ladder is not strictly necessary. The second ladder in the northwest, though, is one that I've never seen built in an actual game, and it takes you to an area on the second floor of the cinema that many players won't expect you to be in. Until players start catching on, ambushing them from up here could be really effective, or alternatively, you could climb up, break the ladder behind you, and hide out in this spot, forcing a whole squad or two of enemy players to waste their time searching for you. This kind of sneaky stuff might be a bit boring and won't get you a whole bunch of points, but distracting the enemy in this way can play a huge part in helping your team win. Fight or hide, it's up to you. Moving on to the final sector around the train wreck, there is a Pak 40 that is basically the counterpart to the 6-pounder gun I mentioned earlier. It also provides some cover along the northern road, although debris from the church severely limits the distance that you can see. To make up for this though, you can also cover the destroyed rear part of the church, which can be quite useful. In terms of cover, you can build up some sandbag defenses, but this gun is definitely not as well hidden as the previous one, so it's best used situationally to support your teammates rather than playing it solo trying to ambush enemy squads. And last but not least, in the German spawn zone, there are 3 machine guns for you to build. The northernmost one is pretty pointless in Conquest because the road towards Bravo that it covers is actually out of bounds for the enemy team, so you'll never face anyone coming at you from that direction. In other game modes, the road can be used by opponents, but even then, the advertising column on the street corner is a real hindrance. You're probably better off just using your primary weapon from a slightly different angle so that you can actually see the enemies. Slightly further to the west is a machine gun that provides somewhat better firing arcs, although you're covering the area behind Alpha. You won't be able to stop anyone from taking the point, but you can make sure that any enemies trying to flank over the crest in the southwest will struggle. In terms of cover, this gun is pretty much as good as it gets. Plenty of sandbags to build, plus you are within the German spawn zone, so there is no way that anyone can sneak up from behind. Finally, all the way in the west, just outside the German spawn, is a machine gun that again allows you to cover the area behind Alpha, but also the part of the collapsed railway line right next to the cap. You get a slightly better view, but you're also slightly more exposed compared to the previous gun. Both of these last guns are quite situational in that you have to play on the German side to use them, and then you need the enemy to attack your home capture point from behind. When this does happen though, these guns can provide you with a decent way of pushing back the enemy. And there we have it, lots of HMGs again, and for most of them, the risk of staying stationary is probably greater than the value of having a hard-hitting gun in most situations. Nevertheless, the machine gun up by Bravo that can shoot into the church, and the one above the AT gun on the British side can be pretty useful, as well as those in the German spawn. The 6-pounder AT gun over in the east is a really well kept secret at this stage, as is the ladder onto the second floor of the cinema at Delta Cap. Use these assets whenever you can. As always, feel free to leave your suggestions on which map I should look at next in the comment section below. Thank you so much for watching, I hope you enjoyed the video, and I will see you in the next episode.